Okay. Good morning and welcome to this joint Audit and Standards Committee. I am Councillor Dave Muller and I am chairing the meeting today. May I first of all remind you of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use, that you do not interrupt other speakers, that if you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. I'd like to make a few introductions, please. The officers attending the meeting today are Catherine Steele, the Assistant Director for Corporate Resources, John Snell, the Corporate Manager for Internal Audit, Risk and Data Protection, Melissa Evans, the Corporate Manager for Financial Services and Commissioning and Procurement, and Jan Robinson, the Corporate Manager for Democratic Services. Also attending the meeting are representatives from the external auditors, Ernst and Young. Can I move to the agenda, please? Item number 1, apologies for absence and substitutions. I will now ask the Governance Officer to roll call for the members present. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, can you please reply with present when I call your name? Councillor Barrett, we have received apologies for. Councillor Hurren, we are aware, is having problems joining the meeting. Councillor Lindsay?
So I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor McCraw?
Present.
Councillor McLaren?
Present.
Councillor Amoroson?
Present.
Councillor Caston has sent his apologies. Councillor Matheson?
Present.
Councillor Muller?
Present.
Councillor Norris?
Present.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 2, to receive declarations of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interest by members. Are there any to declare? No. Okay, thank you. Item number 3, JAC/19/15, confirmation of the minutes of the meeting of the Joint Audit and Standards Committee held on the 27th of January 2020. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes?
Chair, I've got three points which are essentially follow up rather than accuracy.
Right. We're really just looking at accuracy on this particular one, Councillor Matheson.
Shall we have some opportunity to address the items in there which need follow up?
Well, see, on this particular one, I think we're just looking for accuracy on the minutes.
Well, elsewhere on the agenda.
Possibly. Are they relevant to the relevant other items on the agenda?
Well, I think the answer is some of them, but right. I have a couple that are not. Okay.
Well, the ones that are obviously relevant to the other item on the agenda, yes, please bring those up in the questioning when we come.
Right. Well, let's see, paragraph 1810. I'm just getting to it myself now. Here we go. So sorry about the delay. Right, yes, 1810, page 11. I asked about the money that we were investing in Gateway 14 and the the answer at the time was that it was considered short term, and really I wanted to understand what point, how long would be defined as short term or long term.
But does that actually affect the accuracy of these minutes?
It doesn't affect the accuracy of the minutes, but it's a question. If the assistant director wants to take the question and reply to me subsequently and the rest of the committee, that would be okay. But it is something that remains a question.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Matheson. Catherine, would you be able to answer Councillor Matheson's question outside of this meeting, please, and copy all the other committee members into that?
Yes, certainly, Chair, no problem.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions? Councillor Lindsay.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm afraid it's similar to Councillor Matheson. On page 16 of the minutes, there's potential recommendation 3.8. That's in paragraph 21.14. The recommendation 3.8, the officers and members, working parties, etc., take greater account of the council's own declaration of a climate change emergency. Has that been actioned? That's my question. Or do we have a follow-up on that?
Well, again, we're just looking at the accuracy at this time. Catherine, would you be able to provide answers to that again outside of this meeting, please, and copy all members of the committee into that?
So this one refers to climate change. So I would probably need to talk to Cassandra Clements because she's the assistant director leading on that piece of work. Okay,
thank you, Catherine. Is that okay with you, Councillor Lindsay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matheson. You've got your hand up again.
Yeah, on the point just discussed, because I was in the middle of asking for that additional recommendation. So clearly, I'm particularly interested to see the follow through on that. But I do have one other, which is 17.27, and I requested that the external companies' accounts, that they were apparently going to be scrutinised by Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and a report. And I asked that a report was then brought to us, this committee, of their deliberations. I'm not clear that any of that's happened or not.
Catherine, can you highlight on that one, please?
Thank you, Chair. Is that in relation to the group accounts, Councillor Matheson?
Well, it was. I think that the minute says external company accounts, and obviously that's 5 or something companies altogether that it refers to, isn't it?
We have got on the agenda, obviously, EY's final audit report on the 18-19 accounts, and they do some work around our companies as part of the group accounts work, and we've also got their audit plan, so that might be something for them to comment when we get to that item on the agenda, Chair.
Yes, I'm happy with that, Catherine. Thank you.
Yeah, we can we can return at that point. It does. I think the discussion really was that I was asking Ernst & Young about those other companies, and we established that other auditors would be auditing those, and that the appropriate place for those subsidiary audits was scrutiny.
Can I comment?
And so that's why the minutes says as it does.
Chair, can I comment?
So we'll come back to that. Yes,
Councillor McCraw.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's just on that very point. The record states that this was a request that when the company external accounts or the external company accounts had been scrutinised by Joint Overview and Scrutiny, it wasn't actually established that Joint Overview and Scrutiny would be scrutinising those accounts. I'm not sure that was necessarily in the procedures, for scrutiny. It may actually be better suited to audit and standards in the first case, but it's a conditional case. All I can say is that a scrutiny of the external company accounts has not taken place since that meeting, and the minutes is all we're recording here.
Yeah, correct. Thank you, Councillor McCall.
That seems fair enough at the moment. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So does anybody else have any comments about the accuracy of the actual minutes? No? Right. Could I have a proposer for the minutes, please?
Happy to propose.
Thank you, Councillor Norris. A seconder, please.
I'm happy to second, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor McCraw. Could the governance officer now take a roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Please can you reply for, against or abstain? Councillor Amoroson?
For.
Councillor Lindsay?
Abstain because I wasn't there.
Thank you. Councillor McCraw?
For.
Councillor McLaren?
For.
Councillor Matheson?
For.
Councillor Muller?
For.
Councillor Norris?
For.
Thank you, Chair. That's passed.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to move on now to item number, well, the minutes of the meeting have been confirmed and will be signed at the next practicable opportunity. Moving on to agenda item number 4, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme. Could I ask the Governance Officer, please, to comment on that one, please?
Yeah, none received, Chair.
None received. Thank you very much. Item number 5, questions by the public.
None received.
Thank you. And item number 6, questions by councillors.
None received.
Thank you very much, Mandy. We now move on to agenda item number 7, which is JAC/1916 Joint Annual Governance Statement 2019-20. I would now like to invite John Snell, the Corporate Manager for Internal Audit, to present the report. Thank you,
Chair. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, councillors. Excuse me. So this report reviews each council's corporate governance arrangements during 2019-2020 as required by the Accounts and Audit Regulations 2015, and is presented as a joint statement to reflect the governance arrangements in place across both councils. Furthermore, it provides an insight into looking ahead for this year and the key challenges facing both councils moving forward, as well as addressing those challenges which were identified during 2018-19 and the resultant actions taken at that time. This committee has a responsibility for being satisfied that the statement properly reflects the governance arrangements in place. Babergh and Suffolk have adopted a local code of corporate governance that sets out a commitment to corporate governance and summarises the governance arrangements and activities in place to which it's accountable to, and engages with its communities. The local code is consistent with the principles of the SIP for Solace framework, delivering good governance in local government 2016. This statement explains how the councils have complied with the local code and also meets the requirements of the Accounts and Audit Regulations referred to earlier, 2015. To reflect the code, the AGS includes assurance statements from various officers representing the oversight functions, as well as the annual audit opinion from myself. The senior leadership team, as part of the consultation process, have reviewed this and have made comments, and these are actually incorporated within the report that you see in front of you today. The AGS also provides an assurance of the effectiveness of the Council's systems on internal control. The arrangements continue to be regarded fit for purpose in accordance with the framework. There have been no governance issues identified during the year that are considered significant in relation to each Council's overall governance framework. The COVID-19 emergency has meant that the Council has had to make a number of changes to its governance arrangements. This governance statement provides assurance over the governance arrangements that have been in place for the majority of 2019 and 20, and it also identifies through the assurance statements from officers the issues and the changes that have been implemented in response to the emergency. The council's arrangements are under significant pressure, as we all know, but I think it is felt that they are still robust and sufficient for the current circumstances we face. As we look forward and fully assess the COVID-19 impact, this gives us the opportunity for both councils to look to transform how we deliver our services by reviewing, remodelling and reinventing the way the council operates to provide better services to our customers, increase social value, reduce our costs without compromising services, and look to increase and generate income. Are there any questions that relate to the annual governance statement that's presented for you? Thank you.
Thank you, John. Can I open up to any members have any questions for John Snell, please? Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, thank you. I have several. Perhaps we should take it in turn, so to speak. I'm just taking them in order down the page. Yes, let's get there. We are. Yeah, on 4.6. I mean, I realise this is a somewhat controversial point, but the ensuring openness, comprehensive stakeholder engagement. I feel that as a member of the group that's half the council at Mid Suffolk, I'm not really feeling that engaged in the governance process at the moment, actually. Sorry, but I do have to make that point. Okay. Someone else like to have a turn?
Anybody else would like to ask any questions of John, please? Please raise the hand on the Teams bar. Councillor Lindsay.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just wondering if perhaps for future annual governance reports, I mean, since the year in question, we've had the climate change recommendations, and there were a couple of governance changes that were accepted by Cabinet there, including how we report on environmental impact, which I think the implication of the Assistant Director Environment was that it wasn't adequate at the moment. We tend to get a blanket, it's fine, and there was a recommendation to set up a proper to make sure that the environment team looked at every decision the Cabinet makes and its impact on carbon emissions. So I wonder if in future reports we could have a report from the environment team or from the Assistant Director Environment.
Yes, absolutely, Councillor. Yes, I can assure that that happens for the future.
Thank you, Councillor Lindsay. Councillor McCraw.
Just a comment, Chair, on these last couple of points, and I'm just thinking we may be in danger of confusing governance, which is what this statement is about, and the administration, which is the carrying out of policies. The governance statement, to my understanding, is a statement of the overarching structure of governance within the understanding of the Act. It is not about the translation of policies. It just says that we, for example, in 4.6, that we can define outcomes in terms of sustainable economic, social and environmental benefits. That is, there is a mechanism for that, but the actual carrying out of that mechanism and the carrying out of policy is the work of the administration. And those are two separate things. At least that's my understanding of them.
Yes, I think that's a very good point, Councillor McCraw. Thank you for that. Does any other member have any other questions, or do other members listening in have any other further questions? Councillor Matheson, please.
Yeah, with COVID and so on, 4.16 and 17 seem a bit strange actually, because 4.17 rightly says that COVID's been major problems, and 4.16 says there haven't been any significant issues. So I feel as if they're actually contradicting one another, which looks a bit odd. It's a bit presentational, but it did strike me reading through. I have got
could I sort of interrupt?
Points regarding the actual statement as opposed to the report.
Councillor Matheson, could John please come back to you on that one, please?
Absolutely.
When you've just raised, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Matheson. Just to provide a bit of context, the annual governance statement is actually looking backwards. So we're looking at 2019-20. COVID-19 actually took effect, really, the lockdown from March. So that only represented 1 month of the 12 months for last year. So there was little emphasis to place at that stage on the actual annual governance statement. But you'll see within the actual statement itself, many of those key officers made reference to the COVID-19 as we move forward and the challenges that brings. Obviously, we're now sort of moving into the more recovery phase, but that still needs to be very mindful in terms of how we deal with COVID-19 and the effect it has on our governance arrangements as we move forward into this financial year. But in the main, the annual governance statement looks back. It's a retrospective period, so of which only 1 month was really affected, and we didn't really know very much about COVID-19 during March, and we know an awful lot more now, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any further questions, Councillor Matheson, please?
On the statement as opposed to on the report, I don't know how we're going with that. I'm just rolling forward onto the statement now. So there are.
Chair, I had one question on the report, before we leave it.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Matheson, do you mind if your colleague Councillor Lindsay? Yeah. Please go ahead, Councillor Lindsay. Thank you.
So yes. So on the in the bit about assets, I was just wondering where. Council properties like Babergh Gate, where that fits in the governance. I'm hopefully it's in there somewhere, but I couldn't spot where. So it talks about the Babergh growth and Suffolk, but it doesn't talk about governance concerning properties that aren't held in those companies, or is it somewhere else? Or
are you, sorry, Councillor, are you referring to the actual statement as opposed to the covering report?
It's page, well, the bit I'm reading is page 43. I'm not, actually, I thought it was in the report, but it's hard to tell when you're looking online. Hang on a minute.
It's in the statement.
Page 45.
Definitely the statement.
Yeah, it's the statement. The statement. Beg your pardon. Yeah, page 45. So it's just the opinion, the opinion of the Assistant Director, Assets and Investments.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just scrolling down. Bear with me, please.
I would think that, as I say, it does say that it's the holding kind of review these on a quarterly basis with the council's corporate manager. So it is page 45, John.
Sure.
On the actual statement.
Okay, fine.
Chair, I may be able to assist on this one.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine.
Just to say that Babergh Gate is owned directly by Babergh District Council, so that would be subject to the normal governance arrangements. So obviously the Assistant Director for Assets Investments has responsibility, and then reporting would be into the senior leadership team and then into Cabinet, if that helps.
Thank you. Does that help you answer your question, Councillor Lindsay?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll go back to Councillor Matheson and then to Councillor McLaren after that. Councillor Matheson, your question, please.
Thank you. Yeah, so onto the governance statement, page 2930. There's a description of the political makeup and administration of the two councils. And I think if we're going to say that Babergh has no overall political control, then we need to say how Mid-Suffolk is controlled by the Conservative cabinet, i.e. on the chair's casting vote potentially. It's just a mismatch of the descriptions, really.
Thank you.
I can look into that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Chair. I've got some questions, but I was just clarifying that we've formally gone into the statement itself for discussion.
No, we haven't gone to debate yet. We're still in actual questions at the moment.
Yeah, but we're actually continuing with the statement.
Yes, yeah, we can. Yeah, it's all part of the report.
Yeah. Okay, so to John, can I ask? There is on page 30. There's a description of a councillor development working group. Do we have knowledge of which councillors are on that?
No, I wouldn't have that knowledge at hand, though I can actually find out for you.
That would be really helpful.
This is on page 30. Sorry,
the very last paragraph.
Okay.
Chair, if I can assist with that, we do have it's a mixed working group from councillors from all political groups on both from both councils, and they meet on a quarterly basis to look at councillor training and review the training that's already happened, and make sure that we're keeping up with anything current. So I'm happy to send Councillor McLaren those details outside of the meeting.
Thank you very much, Jan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Karen.
Can I do you want to go back to somebody else? Because I've got another similar question to ask.
Do you want to ask that question now?
After Councillor Matheson, probably. Give him a chance.
Councillor Matheson, did you wish to come back?
I'm just looking for my next question,
okay. Chair. Okay, right. Councillor Karen, please carry on.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.
It's a similar sort of question. I've only been on this committee a year, but I was looking at on page 38, John, the Suffolk Counter Fraud Group. Again, and it's from each council, I think. Do we know who is representing us? Oh, Babergh, anyway, as far as I'm concerned, on that group.
Yes, certainly, I can answer that question, Councillor. It's actually a member from my team, Lily Simmerling. This is an officer, just purely officer.
Yeah. Okay, group. That's fine. No, as long as I knew who that was. Okay. And I think so. That's all at the moment, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Councillor Matheson, if you your next question, please.
Thank you. Yes, there's a couple of points, including the one I've just got in my sights at the moment on page 40 about in that instance it's the risk registers being regularly reported to cabinets and this excuse me, this committee. I think the regularly reported is a bit tenuous, or maybe this is the same point that looking back it hasn't been, because we lost 2 meetings this year. But I guess maybe your previous point about this looking back to the year 1920, probably the regularity of reporting was okay. So maybe I've answered my own question. Have I there?
Yes, you have, Councillor. Yes, and just to point out as well, on the 11th of August, this committee will also receive a risk management report and update as well.
Thank you.
Oh, what? Last year?
Yes.
Yeah.
But actually, the significant risk register will be much more up to date, so I'll be able to give you a more up to date version than we would normally, because of obviously COVID-19, obviously having problems in terms of meeting and reporting stuff. So that will be much more up to date registered for you to review and comment on, Councillor.
Thank you, John. Do any other members have any other questions before we move into debate? No. Therefore, what I plan to do is, thank you. I will now open up the item for debate and ask each of you for your comments, please. Could I start with Councillor Oliver Amoroson, please.
No comments.
Do you have any comments for the debate, Councillor Amoroson?
None at this time. Thanks.
None at all. Thank you very much. Councillor Matheson, do you have any other things for the debate?
I think I perhaps just would come back to the to my. So I think it was probably wrong to raise it as a question almost, but the the question of stakeholder engagement. If members are stakeholders, opposition members in particular, are viewed as stakeholders, then I think with the cabinet structure, that the engagement that we have at the moment, which really consists of only the scrutiny and audit functions where the group is represented, is tenuous, and if the principles are to ensure comprehensive stakeholder engagement, then I think we're falling short at the moment.
Okay, moving on. Councillor Lindsay, do you have anything for the debate?
Well, actually, I've just realised I had a question, but it could also be for debate, which I left out. And in the bit on coronavirus, the last paragraph, so we're talking about page 39. Page 39. The last paragraph on the bit about coronavirus, it mentions that COVID could have, actually the second to last part says the threat posed during emergency situations is higher than at other times. All public bodies should be attuned to the risks. And then the last part talks about audit providing resources to the council's business cell to kind of take some extra, do some extra checks on I think people claiming business grants, and it's just that you hear rumours, people claiming for a business grant for somewhere they're actually using as a second home that they aren't using as a B&B or guest house or whatever, because we've doled out millions in business grants. So I just wanted to clarify. Could you sort of reassure us on that? That you are. I find it hard to imagine how you can possibly check all these people whether they're really claiming when they should be.
Yeah, there's certain councillor. There's certain amount of checks that we can do. I mean, obviously, as you quite rightly say, the sort of central government have provided some funds, obviously for those emergency payments, because unfortunately, as I'll talk a little bit on the managing the risk of fraud and corruption paper, there are fraudsters out there that will take advantage of those emergency measures. Sadly, so there are a number of checks because of the remit, if you like, from central government was to get that money out to those most in need quickly. A lot of the checks obviously have been post checks rather than pre-checks, and the government have set up a number of areas that we can tap into, that we can actually do a number of checks on those individuals. There also is a requirement for them to sign an undertaking, a declaration that they believe that they are entitled to that money. So should, in the event of any post checks come out that they weren't, then obviously we will try and make every attempt to reclaim that money. Because of the seriousness of this, I mean, I have to actually say, in terms of the figures that I've received, and I'm saying this touch wood, and it's almost like the auditor's curse here, we haven't experienced many problems at all in terms of fraudulent claims, which I'm very pleased to report. But I do have a dedicated resource from the audit team that's actually looking at that as part of the business cell. with her audit and fraud hat on, so to speak. So the initial area of work was look at end-to-end processes to make sure that they were actually sufficiently robust in terms of what we were checking, and then obviously the checks that we perform as well to try and ensure where we can that those claims are genuine and not fraudulent in nature.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lindsay. I now want to move on to Councillor McCraw. I'll come back to you, Councillor Matheson, because obviously you've asked several points. Councillor McCraw, do you have anything for the debate?
Well, if we're in debate, Chair, it's just really to return to the purpose of the annual governance statement, and Appendix A is, if anybody is minded ever to look closely at it, in fact, it's a statement.
It is.
This is my understanding. It's a statement, but it's a very important sort of guideline to how the council fits together, where the various departments, which section that works with what exists, and we're stating what has existed in that financial year, that council year. So, and I'm always satisfied because I think it works hand in glove with the Constitution. You put those two together and you have a pretty fair idea of at least what the structure is. Now, I am not necessarily saying that the structure always operates precisely to what is presented in the annual governance statement. It is a statement, it is an ideal, and yes, there are times where we can fall short and we can look for improvements. But as a statement and as an explanation of the framework under which this council, Babergh, and obviously the Mid-Suffolk Council jointly operate, I think it's a fair and reasonable one. So I'd like to propose that recommendations 3.1, 2, 3 and 4 be voted upon, and I would like to propose that motion now.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Councillor McCaw, but I would like to give the opportunity to other colleagues that haven't spoken yet, just in case they if that's okay. Councillor,
I'm just saying that on that basis, and having looked through the statement as before, I'm satisfied that it should be voted upon. Thank you.
Yeah, I have. Thank you very much, Councillor McLaren. Did you wish to make any comment? Or?
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to say to John that I found the statement very comprehensive and helpful to me as I was, trying to work my way through all the papers. But on page 42, around commissioning and procurement, that came up at our last meeting when there was some audit of performance, and it felt it was not rigorous enough at that time. So I've got to say I'm very pleased to see on page 42, John, that there's an next phase sort of planned where there will be an upgrading of audit, just the auditing of the performance of procurement and relationships with external contractors. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Norris next, please. Kate, do you have any comments to make, Councillor Norris?
Sorry, my laptop is on the good slow. I had a point around COVID-19, but that's already been covered by Councillor Lindsay.
Thank you.
I take this opportunity just to mention a couple of typos within the statement, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you.
Page 35, second paragraph from the bottom. We're missing a word out of the sentence. It reads the corporate manager for internal and data protection. Well, we're missing the word audit. Okay.
Thank you.
And page 44, just scroll down. Second paragraph. Paragraph from the top. No, I've misread that. I'm sorry. Forget that one. That's fine. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Norris. Before I make my comments, Councillor Matheson, did you wish to make another comment as part of the debate before I make?
Yeah, I think that Councillor McGraw's point is a good one.
Yeah.
I think that a number of the questions and comments that have been made so far really point to places where, partly because of COVID and partly because of changes that there have been and so on, they point to where the statement will need to have significant redrafting before it emerges in 12 months' time. So that I think is the other general point that I would make about it at the moment. Yes, as a description of what's been, but the current situation is resulted in quite a lot of changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Matheson. I'd like to make my comments now. I would like to thank John for his excellent report. It was very detailed, and I must stress that the opinion of the Chief Financial Officer is that the councils continue to operate robust internal controls and good public financial management. So thank you for that. Everybody's had the opportunity to speak. We've had a proposer. If nobody else wishes to speak, can I have a seconder, please, for the 4 recommendations detailed on page 19 of the papers? Councillor McLaren.
Yes, I wish to support that proposal.
Thank you very much. We have a proposer, Councillor McCraw, and seconder, Councillor McLaren. Therefore, I will now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Please could you reply for, against or abstain? Councillor Amoroson.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Lindsay.
For.
Thank you. Councillor McCraw.
For.
Councillor McLaren.
For.
Councillor Matheson.
For.
Councillor Muller.
For.
Councillor Norris.
For.
Thank you, Chair. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now move on to item agenda number 8, which I'm just trying to scroll through to find. Just bear with me a second. It seems to be. Okay. So number 8 is the Jsac 1917 Annual Internal Audit Report 2019-20. Again, I now invite John Snell, the Corporate Manager for Internal Audit, to present the report. Thank you, John.
Thank you again, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to provide councillors with details of the work undertaken by internal audit for the year 2019-20, which is required under the public sector internal audit standards. The report also provides details of the reviews of other corporate activities which are supported by the work of the team. Some of the key messages that I'd like to get across to members today include: 1, around the demand on internal audit services to provide assurance, support and guidance continues as the councils continue to reshape and transform its services. And in line with the council's internal audit charter, the work has been conducted to ensure that it delivers against the public sector internal audit standards and the requirement for me to produce an annual head of internal audit year-end opinion. So our work covers governance processes, monitoring arrangements, ethics, information governance, risk management and fraud management. The fraud management I'll talk to you, which is the next paper, so I'll discuss that a little bit more in detail. The risk management, I think, as I said earlier, will be coming to this committee on the 11th of August. In terms of available resources during the year, you'll note that the specialist lead for internal audit retired in June last year, and that the specialist lead for risk management was successful in applying for a job within the finance team, effective from the beginning of December. A recruitment campaign to replace the specialist for internal audit proved unfortunately unsuccessful. As a result, I produced a report for senior management to consider the options open to the councils for the future provision of its audit service. Now, subject to further discussions, our shared service model, senior management agreed that the option of working with an external partner made good sense, and one that would potentially best suit the business needs of both councils. A combination of a core in-house team boosted by an external resource would allow us to achieve a level of flexibility which can be critical in effectively dealing with a range of operational issues, and enables us to have valuable and diverse specialised skills as required from the external partner if required. The contract was due to start in April 2020, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this has now been put back, and I'm pleased to say that the contracts were actually signed on the 1st of July this year. With the reduction of resources, I've carefully tried to manage the delivery of the audit plan in terms of risk and available skills and experience within the team to ensure coverage at the end of the year, and to really ensure that the audit opinion is not compromised. So looking at Appendix A, moving to Appendix A, looking at those audits with an adverse audit opinion, you'll see that there were 6 audits carried forward from 2018-19. As a result of the follow-up work, 2 of the audits have been closed following positive management actions taken against agreed recommendations. 3 audits will be revisited following the conclusion of the management review. However, I would draw councillors' attention to the proactive work undertaken planned by the corporate manager for finance, that's Melissa Evans, with regard to the contract sourcing and spend reviews, which I think Councillor McLaren touched on earlier. With regards to the housing work, I've arranged for the external audit provider to undertake a health and safety compliance review, which is the conclusions are just being drawn up as we speak now, so there should be a report imminent. For this year, 2019-20, you'll see that we've issued 2 audit reports with an adverse opinion, which will be followed up this year. And these full details of the completed audits you'll find in Section 6 of Appendix A. As well as conducting audit reviews, internal audit has significant involvement in a variety of different audit activities, and just naming a few of these: the production of the annual governance statement, which we've just sort of spoken and discussed about, my attendance at the Statutory Officers Working Group, where governance matters require appropriate professional determination, and also as my role as the the Council's Deputy Monitoring Officer to help ensure councils, their officers and elected councillors maintain the highest standards of conduct. We've also had the development of the Council's corporate values, and again, I dedicated a member of my team to help support that project. With regard to risk management and probity, these areas are subject to separate reports, and obviously the fraud, as I've mentioned, will be coming next, and the risk later in August, 11th of August. You'll see that in terms of performance, audit clients continue to express a high level of satisfaction with the service delivered. The latest figures are based on a 70% return of the completed customer satisfaction surveys that we receive after each audit. Internal audit continue to perform well against the key performance indicators. You'll see that the reduced percentage of the audit plan delivered is as a result of the reduction in available audit resources, which I've actually mentioned, and also the timing of the management review, which include a review of internal audit service provision. In terms of the annual audit opinion, I'm satisfied that the sufficient assurance work has been carried out to allow me to form a reasonable conclusion on the adequacy and effectiveness of each council's internal audit environment. It is therefore my opinion that the Council's framework of governance, risk management and internal control is sufficient. It provides reasonable assurance that the systems, processes or activity should achieve its objectives safely and efficiently. Where we have some control weaknesses, most of those controls are put in place and operating effectively now, and they were identified and actually agreed with management. So I'm pleased to report that there's been a positive response to those areas where we considered that the controls weren't robust enough. I'm happy to take questions on the report, councillors.
Thank you, John. Do members have any questions for John on item number 8, please? Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Chair. I too am having my issues scrolling through because this is a lengthy report, but I was looking at those areas, John, where we have limited assurances, because obviously in most of the cases we do have sufficient reasonable assurance that matters are in hand. And I was just noting the 2 I could note particularly were limited assurance in the area of IT which seems very, very important right now, I have to say. Follow-up planned early 2020, 2021. Well, I suspect that's going to take an even greater priority. And the second one I noted with the limited assurance, you'll do excuse me, my second screen is freezing on me. And page 71 was customers and well-being, workplace security. And I just have to say that obviously with everything in our minds at the moment regarding COVID-19, it seems to me that both of those come into even sharper relief. I just wondered if, John, you could comment on what we're able to do to bring our assurance up to something that's not limited.
Yes, certainly, Councillor. I mean, in terms of, I take the first point, the IT, this is more around the inventory of equipment that we had. And there were some concerns that obviously we all have lots of equipment, but actually trying to have a reciprocal arrangement where we are looking at what the officers have got and what the IT say that we've got. There really wasn't very much coalition between the both, and also slightly concerned about in terms of the amount of money that we were paying. We do have a new corporate manager for IT, Matt Harding, and I have been working with him. He has a copy of the report and is very mindful of the issues that we have raised within that report, and I'm working with him, and I have already he's actually drawn up an inventory checklist, which is a very positive step, so we can actually start to log what we have within the officers and within the office itself. The second point you raised was around about security arrangements. Was that on page 71, Councillor? Sorry, I'm having problems.
I appreciate it. Was page 71, John, and it was concerning workplace security. And obviously everything in that area is subject to considerable review already, I'd have thought.
With me, please, Councillor, while I'm...
6.1.3, customers and well-being on page... Oh, sorry, is that 171? No, it's 71. Oh, that's a list on my documents.
And it was paragraph
6.1.3. It's the list of the audit opinions on assurances. That's whether they be... And I'm focusing on two limited ones.
Certainly, Councillor. I'm sort of just refreshing my mind as well. Okay, so one of the issues in terms of the summary of the key findings was around about council responsibility for health and safety issues for Endeavour House were unclear. Yes, hopefully I'm on the right page, Councillor.
That is it, and it also referred to the Creating Road depot.
Okay, what we actually found, councillors, was, and I'm going back last year now, obviously, last summer, where, if memory serves me right, in the canteen area in Endeavour House, if you're all familiar with that, the doors were opened, obviously to let some fresh air in, but unfortunately a member of the public just walked straight in and obviously didn't go through the proper channels and through in terms of the barriers, and was actually able to get up to the first floor by asking a number of questions regarding a council tax inquiry. So we obviously raised this with our health and safety officer, and we're trying to establish what security arrangements there were in place, bearing in mind what we are a tenant and Suffolk County Council obviously owned the building. And there seemed to be some confusion over whose responsibility it was. Now, we were clearly saying it wasn't ours, but we also wanted to make representation to say that if there was a working group, could we ensure that such items were addressed? And there seemed to be some confusion within Babergh and Suffolk who our representative was and how they would sort of fit into a working group within Suffolk County Council. So that's the issue that we had at that particular instance. And there's still some confusion, I think, in terms of who's going to take ownership of that. And it's something, obviously, we just want to address. In terms of Creating Road, again, I actually sent one of my auditors just out there to do a number of checks, just in terms of being able to get into the building as well, whether we're going to be challenged, if we had our badges or not, what the level of assurance was around IT security, where the monitors were just left open and weren't shut and closed. And there were a number of issues that we raised there, and we again spoke to the corporate manager there, who has made some changes in terms of the security arrangements around Creating House that wouldn't allow, again, people, whether it be members of the public, just coming to walk into the depot without being challenged. We're working, as I say, with the corporate manager on that, and he's already made some differences to allow, so the security arrangements are far more robust.
John, I just wanted to, can I come back with a supplementary, Councillor Miller?
Yes, I'll have that.
Are we taking this further, given the COVID-19 situation, where we have another layer of security requirement?
Are you talking Creating House now, or
I'm talking both, actually.
both?
I think both Endeavour House and, in fact, any council offices, we have a security need from the point of view of public health. Yeah,
certainly the security arrangements in Endeavour House are undertaken by Veritas, sorry, struggling. They are responsible for security of the building and obviously report to council, Suffolk County Council in that. And again, what we were trying to establish, if there were any sort of breaches or concerns, then obviously that would be relayed to Babergh Mid Suffolk as a tenant, and all tenants within Endeavour House. And again, certainly with Creating Road, yes, I think there are clear guidance in terms of the information that have been provided from our senior leadership team through to our officers as well. And at the moment, obviously, with Endeavour House, you'll be aware that we will not be returning to Endeavour House for the foreseeable future.
Thank you. I just wanted to ensure that steps were being taken and wondered what they might be, but obviously that's a moot point at the moment.
Yes, there has been something recently come out from Arthur in terms of coming back to the office and the phases that potentially that would happen. So it might be worth at this stage just having sight of that. Catherine, I don't know whether you could just jump in. The slides and the video that were provided by Arthur, were they extended to members as well, to your knowledge?
It was a staff briefing, I think, that Arthur put out, so I'm not sure off the top of my head whether it was.
Yeah,
I'm not aware. I don't think any member is aware of having received any updates since Endeavour House has been strictly verboten to us all.
Right.
Chair, can I?
Yes,
comment?
yes, Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, in the weekly report, or possibly a special report that the chief executive put out, there was a link to a video, quite a long video, 25 minutes of video, I think it was, which did actually discuss this in very great detail, and I'm looking forward to eventually writing him quite a few comments on it. But it is available to members, but there's just a little tiny link that you needed to click.
Thank you, Councillor.
I must admit, I did actually see that. It was quite a lengthy video. I think it's 45 minutes in total, I believe. I did see that. I haven't watched it myself, but I did see the link on that. So thank you for that, Councillor Matheson. Councillor McCraw, sorry, did you want to come back, please?
Chair, my apologies.
Yeah, you're happy with that? Councillor Matheson, you have a question?
Yes, I'm not whether it's going to be a comment or a question, but I was quite surprised and struck by officers' comment regarding the loss of staff, which obviously I knew of the retirement, but the unsuccessful recruitment and the external partner, I hadn't heard. I wasn't aware of that at all. Now the chief executive has been quite vigilant latterly, let's say over the last 12 months or something now, in reporting in the weekly staff and members briefing note that goes round, some of the arrivals and departures, which was in response to members asking for that. I think that the particular internal audit situation has kind of slipped through and not been reported there, but I think it is of particular interest, and obviously has contributed to page 73, where we find that the percentage completion of the audit plan is has suffered, and say these were matters that would create some member anxiety, and I'd have kind of been happier to know about it sooner. Let's put it that way.
Thank you very much, Councillor Matheson. Does any other member have any questions on this agenda item? I've got several actually linked to basically what Councillor McCraw was saying. John, just to go through some of these recommendations, particularly the limited assurance ones. 2.11, which is on page 62, the present status at this report date. I'm reading the paragraph down there. Considerations will still need to be given to capital costs of service improvement, which now fall across the multiple services following the management restructure. It's a recurring theme I found set on several of these limited assurance things. Perfectly happy with your report, but I personally would find it helpful if we could have a date when some sort of further information could be made available to us. I'm sort of harping back to my days working for both Department of Health Audit and District Audit, the Audit Commission, and certainly that was something we would look to, would be to have dates when some of this further information could be available. Don't know what your thoughts are on that, John.
Yeah, happy to do that, Councillor. Yes, just to bring a bit of clarity and assurance for yourselves. So
that's one thing that I would, and that's the same really with some of the others. Sure. The other one I think there was one about hospitality, gifts and hospitality. And I think this is one I raised last year. I think it's important that obviously apart from members of staff, and I appreciate there is a register for hospitality, etc. But I think obviously councillors should also be included in that if they do actually receive any gifts, etc. I know it happens. I go back to when I was Mayor of Stowmarket 3 years ago. I did receive a couple of gifts from various organisations, which I did declare on the gift hospitality register at Stowmarket Town Council. They were only just over £25, which is, I believe, is the limit still. But I do think that's really important that councillors are fully aware of that, as well as the officers.
Yeah, certainly. I think in the past as well, I have actually issued some guidance as well for both councillors and officers as well alike, particularly coming up to Christmas. That time of period is often quite fruitful, shall we say, in terms of generosity. Yeah, and 2.1.5 was the housing one. Again, it's just really, do we have a completion date or proposed completion date for that on 2.15? Yeah. I can actually provide a little bit of update on that. A draft report is currently with the Assistant Director for Housing and also some of his corporate managers as well to comment on the first draft. So that should be imminent.
Thank you very much for that. Do any other members have any questions on this particular item, number 8? No? Then we can go into debate. Does any other member wish to debate this particular item before we go to the recommendation? No? Right, I'm just trying to find the recommendation, scrolling back through my papers. Right, the recommendation is that the contents of this internal audit report supported by Appendix A be agreed. I'm happy to propose that amendment. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Norris. Therefore, could I ask the governance officer to go through the list of members as a vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, if you could please reply for, against or abstain. Councillor Amoroson?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Lindsay?
For.
Councillor McCraw?
For.
Councillor McLaren?
4.
Councillor Matheson,
4.
Councillor Muller,
4.
Councillor Norris.
4.
Thank you, Chair. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much, Mandy. I'd now like to move on to item number 9, JAC/19/18, Managing the Risk of Fraud and Corruption Annual Report. And again, I invite John Snell, the Corporate Manager for Internal Audit, to present his report, please. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair. I think, thankfully, this is the last report of mine. So I've just taken some water. Right, okay. So, councillors, this report outlines the current arrangements in place across both councils to ensure there is a proactive corporate approach to preventing fraud and corruption, and also provides details of the proactive work undertaken during the year. To provide some context around general fraudulent activity in local government, CIPFA produces annual national statistics based on return surveys, of which we participate in, which indicate that the total estimated value of fraud detected or prevented by local authorities in 2018-19 is 253 million, which actually was 49 million less than last year's total, hopefully indicating that the internal controls are stronger and more risk targeted. I think the decrease in the total value can largely be attributable to the successful working in housing with regard to reduction in the number of unlawful sublet properties and false right to buy applications, which still feature highly as areas of fraud risks for all councils up and down the land. I can give assurance to members that previous scheduled work in these areas have been undertaken by internal audit, and as a result, a number of due diligence checks have been implemented to further strengthen the control environment in those areas. Fraud and corruption, in terms of risks, are identified as part of the planning process. This is supported by a fraud risk register, which contains a list of areas where we and corporate managers believe the councils could be susceptible to fraud. The register also helps managers to focus on suitable internal controls to mitigate any subsequent risk of fraudulent activity. Part of our work also includes raising awareness across the councils and includes, for example, forwarding relevant alerts which we receive via the National Fraud Bulletins to ensure that our own internal controls are adequate and robust. Reminder to both councils and staff of their responsibility around gifts and hospitalities, which the Chair quite rightly pointed out. And again, this has been an area subject to an audit that the results that you'll find in the previous report I presented to you. The recent developed corporate values was used as an opportunity to remind staff of the council's whistleblowing arrangements and how we as an organisation want to create an open and supportive culture where staff feel comfortable in raising concerns when they feel something is wrong without fear of any consequences. The councils, through the Shared Revenues Partnership, continue to give out strong messages about fraud in both publicity issued and also internal documents regarding council tax and housing benefit claim forms. To help fight fraud and corruption locally, each council, I think I referred to this earlier, across Suffolk, have nominated a representative to sit on the Suffolk Counter Fraud Group, and it's intended to hold these meetings about 3 to 4 months every month. Their main objectives are to explore the possibility of sharing and matching data, explore the possibilities of a joint working and sharing resources, given that resources across Suffolk are limited, share material, resources, ideas promoting fraud and awareness among staff and councillors, to do some joint training, again cutting down costs, and also sharing best practice in relation to working arrangements, investigations, case management, and to perhaps investigate cases jointly where it is found appropriate. Going back to the Council Shared Revenues Partnership, the team has been recognised by the DWP, Department for Working Pensions, for their work to reduce fraud and error in housing payments. So a real big pat on the back to them. They're doing to be honest, a fabulous job in that area. The team have also been thanked by the DWP for their continuous efforts in tackling fraud and error across the districts, and have also been asked to work with them to develop best practice. So that's really testament to the work they're doing, which the DWP can refer to when working with other authorities whose performance require improvement. So in terms, again, of the SRP work, they continue to apply what's called a risk-based verification approach to HB claims, which allows more intense verification activity to be targeted to those claims which are deemed to be high risk of involving fraud and or error. They participate in this Suffolk-wide single persons discount exercise during last year, 1920, although work continues on a number of discounts have been removed, which is again pleasing. And again, the number of value are reported, I think, in paragraph 4.23 of this report. Internal Audit continues to take a leading role in the National Fraud Initiative work and has started to investigate those identified matches for the latest during the latest exercise. You'll see that part in this report, internal audit activity, we've recently worked with Ipswich Borough Council, their fraud team, to investigate a Babergh council tax reduction scheme. As a result, the CTR claim was cancelled back in September and an overpayment created, resulting in a rebill of over £2,000 to Babergh. Further cases have been referred to the IBC team to investigate. In terms of looking forward and ahead against a backdrop of reduced funding, we need to assess fraud risks effectively and target resources where they'll produce most benefit. We need to remain particularly alert to the threat of fraud as a result of the COVID-19 impact. And I think, as I've mentioned before, sadly, unfortunately, fraudsters are exploiting the spread of COVID-19 in order to carry out fraud and cybercrime. We've issued alerts to our residents to help minimise the risk of becoming a victim of such frauds and cybercrime. And in response to the COVID-19, the government is providing funding through the local authorities who are responsible for business rates to support businesses. A member of the internal audit team is supporting the business cell to provide that level of assurance that funds are only paid to eligible businesses where we can, and ensuring that appropriate action is taken to recover any funds where we think there has been fraudulent activity or error. Okay, are there any questions relating to this report, please, councillors?
Any questions from members? Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, just the one really. In terms of the, what shall I say, discouraging fraud and so on, are we being as active as we can be in ensuring that the people we catch, that the reports are publicised appropriately? Because I'm always a great believer in the the justice seen to be done, or encouraging the others, or however one would want to express that, that everybody knows that we are catching people, and therefore that it might be them that we catch if they do the wrong thing. Thanks.
Yes, certainly, Councillor. Yeah, certainly, Councillor. If there are some more what I would call high-profile cases, then they would obviously be publicised, and obviously they would, through sanctions, would go through the courts, and obviously the press will take a keen interest in publicising those widely in the local papers.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I if I could just momentarily, Chair. I mean, I think the the cases where we, and I think the classic one, of course, is the right to buy, etc., and that being exploited. That we publish. Obviously, you can't name names if it doesn't get to the point of going to court, because we intercept earlier. But again, the fact that we, that last year we intercepted X number of claims that would have been potentially fraudulent if they'd gone ahead, or things like that. That we just go as far as we can in as I said, encouraging people with the thought that they will get caught.
Yeah, and also within the applications there are clear declarations in terms of if we find out later that this is a fraudulent claim, or we even find out during the case that it's a fraudulent claim. I'm very pleased in terms of the guys that deal with the right to buy applications. They have a set of due diligence checks, and the staff involved are very keen to pick off those where they think or they require further information. And the problem that we have sometimes, Councillor, is that an application may fall for whatever reason, but it's sometimes difficult to prove whether they actually didn't wish to pursue their application because they felt that they would actually be found out. There may be some genuine reasons and there may be some unsavoury reasons, but it is difficult at that stage to fully understand whether they were intending to submit a fraudulent claim. So we have to be very careful in terms of how we report such cases.
Yeah, I say not. I'm just coming back from reporting individual cases to just giving the general sense that we're onto the case of preventing it well.
Yeah, certainly the preventative measures are strong in terms of the whole process as well, from looking at clear evidence, and it's down to the applicant to provide that necessary evidence, not us. So they have to prove genuineness of that application.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matheson. Councillor McCraw, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask officers, and John in particular, how you would characterise both councils' exposure to fraud, perhaps in relation to other authorities in similar circumstances and perhaps in dissimilar circumstances. Are we more at risk than others? Are we less at risk? How would you characterise our exposure?
I think generally, Councillor, it's a very good question actually, because I don't have necessary statistics in Suffolk, for example, other than talking to my counterparts, the heads of audit through Suffolk. Generally, and I have to be very minded when I say this, historically, Babergh and Mid Suffolk have low levels of fraud. Now, that is, and there's a caveat attached to that very statement, is that we have to determine what we can do with the resources that we have available. Now, if I had a dedicated fraud team, we might be able to find more. I'm not saying it goes on, but we might be able to investigate more and actually look at more sensitive areas. It's not until you turn the stone over, you don't realise what's actually underneath. But I can assure you that in terms of what we're doing for Babergh and Suffolk, in terms of the fraud risk register, we are actually targeting areas where we think there is potential fraud that could take place within certain service areas, and we're trying to take every step to obviously mitigate those with strong controls that are in place. There's always going to be examples where people will try and see opportunities. We've just got to try and plug those opportunities to ensure that our obviously control environment is as secure as we can possibly make it. As I said, I liaise particularly obviously alongside the SRP and also the Ipswich fraud team, who have a dedicated fraud section. They're in a very fortunate position, and often I will have conversations with them in terms of, if we have potential fraud, how we're going to pursue that with their expertise. But I think generally Mid Suffolk Babergh, as I said, historically have low levels of fraud generally, and I'd like to think that's the case in terms of the strong control environment that we do have in place. But obviously that won't deter fraudsters, because they'll always find different ways of trying to look at opportunities.
Councillor Muller, may I just ask a second question somewhat related to this and more specific?
Yes, of course you may. Yes.
Thank you very much. I apologise to Councillor McLaren for keeping her waiting. The particular concern I've become aware of during the lockdown was that in cases of subletting, for very good reasons, our housing team have been unable to act as they would normally have done, because that doesn't make sense during a pandemic. But I wanted to ask is that do we see ourselves being able to go forward and to resume, as I would put it, normal service in the case of subletting, which has been there have been a number of cases, and I think every council with properties has experience of this, and they can cause a considerable number of social issues. And many of us in our wards will have come across these. I just would like to know if we're going to be able to get started on that again.
Yeah, I can have that conversation with the Assistant Director Housing and also his corporate managers to establish what precautions we can take as we move forward and how we can escalate those. Because I'd imagine at the moment, obviously with the lockdown, there's very There isn't a huge amount we can do, but obviously we want to send out the right message that we actually haven't taken our eye off the ball. So that's something I can discuss with Gavin, if I may, Councillor.
Yeah, it has in fact been used as something of a get out of jail free card, I'm afraid.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McLaren, please.
Thank you, Chair. John, across Ipswich, I know of at least 4 charities that deal with or provide a money advice service, which, and having worked with one, a lot of it is about council tax and housing benefit. Is there any relationship between what you're talking about and is there any joint training with these sort of the organisations themselves?
It's a very good question. I'm not aware that there is, but interestingly, taking that point forward, I could raise that through the Suffolk Fraud Group as a very valid point, and to see what arrangements are in place across Suffolk and how we can actually share best practice. So I think that's a very valid point, Councillor, and if I may, I'll use that group to actually raise that issue.
Thank you very much, John. That's brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor McLaren. Yeah, I would also like to say, I'd like to commend John on this report. Again, during the noughties, I was actually a DWP fraud manager, and I used to liaise on a regular basis with my opposite number. It was at Northampton Borough Council in those days. And I think some of the points that Councillor Matheson raised, again, very, very relevant. Certainly we would do, because you had joint fraudulent claims normally with income support or job seekers allowance and housing benefit. We would always try to get maximum publicity in the local press, and I would always liaise with the DWP press office, because we found if we've got maximum publicity, then it was surprising many people would sign off after a case had been reported. And the other thing we would also do is that if there was a large amount involved, we would try and ask the Magistrates Court to refer it up to Crown Court for sentencing. And I presume that the SRP or the fraud team in Ipswich Borough Council would do a similar thing. But I do commend John on liaising with his colleagues in the other councils. I do think that's really, really helpful in trying to deter any type of fraud. So thank you for that, John. Do any other members have any other questions? Or Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, just before Mr. Snell disappears after a good long run, I think it would be reassuring, and this goes back to some extent to the previous item on the agenda, that if we had a reassuring report to our August meeting regarding the staffing arrangements that he's put in place, that would be good.
Thank you, John.
Can I just sort of clarify in terms of what you're looking for from me in terms of those staffing arrangements? Are you looking for a report or just an overview in terms of the audit provision as we're moving forward?
Well, I think just I
can give you a paper that sets out
a verbal update that the external partnership arrangement has started successfully on the July the 1st and is delivering strongly. Maybe one should look at the practice of the overview and scrutiny committees, where they do actually have a bulletin which just updates the committee without requiring discussions and votes and things. That maybe it's more in that context.
If I could just come back very quickly, if I may, Councillor. Obviously, if you're talking about an update in August and we're in July now, the external provider won't have achieved a huge amount of work. But what I do, as you're aware, is I provide councillors with a midterm half-yearly report around about October, November time. So that will give you a better indication in terms of the work that they've undertaken and their findings. I just think it's a little bit, sorry, I'm not trying to do, it's just a little bit too soon. So I wouldn't be able to report very much next month, quite frankly, when we're all trying to set up the work as they move forward. Obviously, they're just coming back because obviously it's affected them greatly, the COVID-19. So they're just now touching base with a lot of their other clients. We're a new client. And obviously I've liaised with Melissa, who I believe is on the line, and we're sort of almost sorting to 2 audits we're looking at to start very, very soon. And I'll be in a better position, obviously, October, November time, to give you an update in terms of where we are with the work that they've undertaken, if that's acceptable.
Yeah, that seems good. I mean, all I would say is if it's not going well, it would be, good to hear sooner rather than later.
Yes.
Very much. Obviously.
Yeah. I would just provide a little bit of assurance in terms of the housing work that has been undertaken by the external provider, and the quality of the work that has crossed my desk in terms of the draft report has been very. I've been very pleased with the professionalism and also the report that they've produced. So, and again, I haven't had any adverse feedback from the housing people themselves, and I look forward to actually speaking with Gavin in terms of the findings of that report. And again, that will be part of the process that I'll report back at mid-term. But everything seems to be working well at the moment. So I'm very pleased with how things are progressing.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCraw, please.
Just to that point, Chair, in scrutiny, we found that a minimum of 6 months is usually required for any bulletin to contain data worth having. And if the data hasn't been collected and doesn't actually have any validity, there's no point in having it. So that's what we found.
Yes, I would agree with that, Councillor McCraw. Any other questions from members? No, then we can now move into debate. Does any other member wish to debate this particular paper? No? Okay, well, the recommendation, which is on page, sorry, Councillor Norris, did you wish to? Councillor Norris? Councillor Norris? Are you mute?
No, sorry, it's very delayed.
Okay. Sorry, did you wish to ask a question?
Not really a point as such. Just that I've just spotted actually something on the table on the foot of page 85, which is continued on to the top, page 86. The right-hand column is headed 2029/20 rather than 2019/20. It's just a typo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Norris. Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Chair. Honestly, I think the simplest answer is that this report is there to tell us that the risk of fraud and corruption is being managed. That's all it needs to do. Okay. I think it's done so more than adequately, frankly. It's very relieving, given the difficult circumstances and the fact we've had outside money coming in. And although we aren't able to exercise our normal controls, we are able to have a look back and make sure that nothing's gone wrong. But the speed has been of the essence. So I'd like to propose recommendation 2.1 as contained in the report.
Thank you, Councillor McCraw. Councillor Matheson?
Yeah, I thought I would second it, actually, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Matheson. Therefore, could I ask the Governance Officer to do the roll call, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, could you please reply for, against or abstain? Councillor Amoroson?
For.
Councillor Lindsay?
For.
Councillor McCraw?
For.
Councillor McLaren?
For.
Councillor Matheson?
For.
Councillor Muller?
For.
Councillor Norris?
For.
Thank you, Chair. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, I'd now like to move on to Jsac 1919, the Joint Annual Audit Report for 2018-19. I'm just trying to scroll down again to find that on my papers. And therefore, I'd like to invite Suresh Patel from External Auditors Ernst & Young to present the report to you. Over to you, Suresh, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to members of the committee. So our report on the 18-19 account starts on your page 91. I think first and foremost, just worthwhile kind of recognising how incredibly frustrating it has been in terms of getting the 18-19 audit concluded. If you remember, at the end of January committee, we were kind of almost there. And then we entered into the period where COVID-19 had impacted both in terms of obviously our ability in terms of the finance team as well as the audit team's ability to interact face to face, but also then, as I've alluded to in the paper, we have had to then consider the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on your actual accounts. And in particular, you'll see a focus on what it means for financial resilience and your going concern disclosure. Hopefully, you'll be pleased to know that we have concluded that audit now. We are proposing to issue an unqualified opinion on the accounts and a clean value for money conclusion, which is always a positive thing for the council to receive. I should emphasise that the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, like I said, has been that you have now included a detailed disclosure note in terms of going concern. So the Assistant Director of Corporate Resources has carried out an assessment of the impact of the pandemic on your income, your expenditure, impacts on balances and reserves, and that is now disclosed in your accounts as it pertains to the 18-19 accounts, which the going concern assertion that you make in your accounts and the going concern assertion that we make in our audit report actually covers a 12-month period from the date that those accounts are finally approved, which is obviously sort of today or tomorrow when it comes to the audit report. So that actually assessment has been very helpful, I think, for the council in terms of the understanding the impact of the pandemic, and the disclosure we are satisfied with. We had to put that disclosure and our audit report through a internal EY consultation process, another impact of COVID-19, because clearly we want to make sure that we are giving the right assurance to the council and its stakeholders through the audit report, and that was concluded late last week. So it's worthwhile then saying that in the report itself, the audit report, which is on page 106, you will see that we have included what's called an emphasis of matter paragraph to highlight the disclosures that you have now made around COVID-19. And just to be clear, that emphasis of matter is not a modification to the report or any form of qualification. It is, as it says, it is emphasising to the reader of the accounts an important disclosure that the council has made. But like I say, that is not a qualification. You are receiving an unqualified audit report. Chair, I'll stop there and happy to take any questions on this report.
Thank you very much, Suresh. I noticed, Councillor Norris, you've got your hand up. Did you wish to ask a question of Suresh, please?
No, sorry, I should have lowered that earlier.
Thank you, Councillor Norris. Does any other member have a question for Suresh, please? Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, if you could talk a little bit about the liaison with the auditors of our various group companies, and how the group accounts have been consolidated into the accounts of the two councils.
Yep, happy to do so. We'll probably give a bit more detail when we talk about the 1920 audit plan as well, because we actually put an explanation in there. But essentially, yes, we are responsible for giving an opinion on not only each individual council's accounts, but also the consolidated accounts that they prepare, so the group accounts. We take a view on whether or not we think the subsidiary companies are significant, either in terms of the size, in terms of turnover or assets that they hold, or in terms of any specific risk that we consider to be relevant to the group accounts. For the purposes of Babergh Mid Suffolk, we identify, I think it's Sifco and Gateway 14 as being significant, and as a result, we actually seek to place reliance upon the audit of those companies by, as you have mentioned before, by their own auditors. So we engage with them, we liaise with them. We share our view on risks, and we have a discussion about risks, and then we actually review the work that they've done on those accounts. We receive their audit report and basically form a view from ourselves whether or not we can rely upon their work. And having done that, we are then able to issue our opinion on the group accounts. The council obviously consolidates each of those entities, and I think you apply an equity share method, so you actually just recognise that your share of profit or losses into your accounts, and we obviously audit that consolidation process to make sure that your group accounts are materially accurate. As I said, we do refer to that later on, Chair, in the 1920 audit plan to provide a bit more detail, but that is essentially what we do in terms of the group accounts and the component auditors.
Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Matheson?
My brain is just processing really. Yes, I said yes. If you could just explain a little more, or possibly even Catherine Steele needs to explain a little more the implications of recognised equity share and how the balance sheet, the group balance sheet, which presumably is somewhere where I haven't looked yet, how that reflects.
I don't know if Catherine wants to come in on that one. So it's your decision about taking the equity share method.
Catherine, could I ask you to answer that one, please, for John?
I was going to say the decision was made in terms of 10% equity goes into SIFCO, but I wonder if this is a discussion that we perhaps take offline and provide a bit more information. Obviously, we haven't got the accounts themselves in front of us, and we will be looking at the 1920 accounts in the future. So I wonder if this is perhaps an area that we do take offline and perhaps do it in terms of perhaps some training around the accounts for when we bring in 1920.
I think that's a very good idea, Catherine. Councillor Matheson, are you happy with that?
Broadly, yes. On the presumably the 1819 accounts have got group consolidation, etc., in them as well. However, so are our auditors yes comfortable with all of that in the 1819 accounts?
Yes, I can confirm that. As I said, we're issuing an unqualified audit opinion, which includes the group accounts.
Yeah, so we'll come back to the how the consolidation of the balance sheet and so on works, either on the annual audit plan or more likely in a training session. Then, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions for Suresh? No, thank you very much, Suresh. I would like to comment. It's an excellent achievement to get unqualified reports. Again, I hark back to my time working with the Department of Health Audit and the Audit Commission, and not once did I come across a set of unqualified reports. So well done to all the officers for their work to ensure that everything is how it should be. So thank you. Councillor McCraw.
I just recall, Chair, for Suresh, that at the last time we met, there were delays in the industry in general that were affecting audits across the country in a variety of areas. I think you referred to it in what you said then. And I just wondered if this is unrelated in many ways, but it may relate to our joint annual audit plan that we're going to be looking at next. So just to get it out there right now. Has that situation improved any? Has the backlog been caught up with that the industry itself was suffering?
So whilst it has improved, clearly the pressures haven't gone away in terms of the underlying reasons for those pressures, which, if you recall, was, as you rightly say, was a kind of industry-wide challenge in terms of recruitment and retention. And whilst we as a firm have actually recruited a significant number of new additions to our teams, that always takes a little bit of time for those individuals to get up to the right level of speed and understanding, but it has improved. But when we talk about 1920, we've agreed a kind of a phasing program for all of the East of England local authorities that we audit, and that has an impact on Babergh and Suffolk, and we'll talk about that in a second. So it is we are in a better position. We still have a number of 18-19 audits that we have yet to close off, and COVID, as I said, the impact in things like going concern, emphasis and matter on audit reports hasn't helped, because it's just added an additional layer of work. And actually, whilst it's been impressive, actually, both from the finance professionals' perspective and also auditors, how we've been able to operate by working remotely, that remote working does still have an additional layer of complexity and takes a little bit more time than things would do normally when you're just face to face and asking questions to officers. So generally it has improved, but there still remain challenges.
I can't say we've noticed any time delays here.
No.
Sorry, that was meant to be ironic. My apologies, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McCraw. Do any other members have any other questions on this item? So now we can debate the item. Do any members wish to debate this item further? If not, then I recommend that I'm happy to propose a recommendation on page 89, which the report is noted. Can I have a seconder, please?
Happy to propose.
I'll second.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. Could I ask the governance officer, please, to do a roll call of the members for their votes, please?
Thank you, Chair. Again, councillors, if you could reply for, against or abstain. Councillor Amoroson.
For.
Councillor Lindsay.
For.
Councillor McCraw.
For.
Councillor McLaren.
For.
Councillor Matheson.
For.
Councillor Muller.
For.
Councillor Norris.
For.
Thank you, Chair. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to move on to item number 11, JAC/1921, the Joint Annual Audit Plan. And again, I would like to invite Suresh Patel from External Auditors, Ernst & Young, to present the plan. Over to you, Suresh, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the report starts on your page 117, and this, as you say, is the audit plan for the 1920 statements of accounts. I'm going to just give you a bit of an overview and then hand over to Vicky to take you through in terms of what the key risk areas are and areas of audit focus. So I suppose following on from the 18-19 closure of the audit, and I mentioned about the impact of COVID-19, clearly that has then a following impact on the 2019-20 accounts. And we have reflected on that in the audit plan. So a number of the areas of audit focus which are either new or enhanced are as a result of the pandemic, and actually are reflected in virtually all of our audit plans for local government bodies. So clearly the issues that are impacting on your financial reporting and accounts are impacting across the board. As I said before, one of the main ones is around going concern, and just to be clear, it's not about a challenge of are you a going concern, it's about should there be disclosures around the pressures and the potential risks around your financial position and performance going forward. A specific one that Vicky will elaborate on is around the valuation of certain assets at the 31st of March 2020, given the volatility of market data at that point in time. That does present a risk in terms of the accounts. I've mentioned about audit delivery in terms of remote working. Clearly, we've all been remote working since the late March. And again, we've kind of learned some good ways of working, I suppose, from concluding the 18-19 accounts with your finance team to enable us to deliver to enable your finance team to prepare the accounts, but also then enable us to deliver the audit. One of the other impacts of COVID-19 has been that MHCLG have changed the timetable for reporting, which has been helpful. But as I mentioned before, we've agreed with the East of England Chief Financial Officers a phasing approach to each of the audits for 1920, and that has meant that one will come to be your timetable for audit. That has impacted upon the timetable that we've now got in place to deliver your audit. I'll hand over to Vicky, who's going to take you through the overview pages.
Thank you, Suresh.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Suresh. I'm pleased to present our 1920 Outline Audit Plan, which has set out how we intend to carry out our responsibility. On page 123 and 124 of the report, it set out the audit risk and area of focus for the audit. Just to highlight that there are no changes in risk compared to last year, except for property, plant and equipment valuation, as just mentioned by Suresh. This is now a significant risk, and it is due to decisions to change a valuer from district valuer to Wicks, Hat and Eve. And therefore, from the audit perspective, we need to obtain an understanding of the work performed by the new valuer, including the valuations and methodology and assumption used. Like Suresh mentioned as well, the COVID-19 pandemic also has driven an increased risk assessment on the PPE, in particular where assets were valued using the market value. But we noted that this has less impact for social housing property. In addition, we also mentioned about how the pandemic has impact on the going concern, and as a result, because of the pandemic increased pressures on the council finances in 1920, therefore it has led to one new area of focus, which is going concern. Like there are other COVID-19 impact we consider in the report, which are detailed in page 1 to 4, including the remote working arrangements and how we work with the finance team to obtain the relevant evidence for the audit. And because of the ongoing uncertainty COVID-19 presents to the material accuracy of the financial statements, our firm has introduced consultation process on all audit reports, which means that there may be an impact on the timing on the content of the audit reports that we issue. I would also like to draw your attention to the changes in the reporting timescale announced by MHCLG, which is just mentioned by Suresh, that the council are required to publish their draft account by 31st of August. This has moved from the previous deadline of 31st of May, and to publish their audited accounts by 30th of November. And this was moved from the previous deadline of 31st of July. The council has initially planned to prepare their draft account by end of June, and our audit work will start in July. However, due to the COVID-19, there are increased demands on finance team to deal with the pandemic, and therefore the timeline to deliver the draft account has moved to early August now. Because we plan, like Suresh just mentioned, because we plan and agree our audit resources in a phasing approach for all our clients, this means that we will have to reschedule our audit to a later date, which is to substantially start the audit in early November. But we will commence our analytic work, sample selections, accounts review, and asset valuation work during the summer. This is to ensure that we have a team that has experience of the councils to carry out the work. We will be aiming to complete the audit by mid of December and reporting a completed audit for the January committee meeting. And then moving on is in terms of value for money, we have considered COVID-19 impact, and because the lockdown was announced a week before the year end, we have not identified a significant VFM risk in relation to COVID-19 at this stage. So we also mentioned about the group audit. So with regard to the scoping of the group audit in page 140 and 141, we confirm that we have now received the information to conclude our scoping, which remain the same as shown in the report, i.e. the full scope for both Suffolk and Gateway 14 due to the sizes of these entities, and specific scope for MSDC Suffolk Holding and BDC Suffolk Holdings. Just to clarify on the group audit scoping, a full scope is where a full audit is performed by the subsidiary auditor, the entity's auditor, which is Ernst, at the maturity level set by us, and also on additional procedures that are required by us as a group audit team. While the specific scope is limited to specific accounts or disclosure that are identified by us. We will review answer works and their reporting packages for the audit. So that brings to the end of the report.
And just the final thing, Chair, I wanted to highlight is around audit fees, which are on page 150 and 151 onwards. You'll see there in the two tables we've included what we typically do in terms of a range of additional fees where we are carrying out work that's kind of outside the normal kind of scale fee. But you'll also see reference to our proposals to increase the actual scale fee, and this follows on from issues that I've flagged at earlier committee meetings about the kind of the industry itself, and particularly the kind of local public sector audit market and how sustainable that is. We have been in dialogue nationally with PSAA about our view that things have changed significantly since 2007 when the most recent tender was awarded, particularly around the increased requirements on auditors to meet regulatory requirements set by the Financial Reporting Council. And we have then calculated what we feel to be a more full and proper scale fee for your two councils. We've also shared the detail of that with your Assistant Director of Corporate Resources, and we know that she's discussing and debating that with her colleagues across Suffolk and the east of England in terms of how their fees compare. That is, like I said, a national dialogue that is happening, and we will update the committee at the next opportune moment in terms of when PSAA make any determination on those fees. Again, we'll stop there and we're happy to take questions, Chair.
Any questions for either Vicky or Suresh, please? Councillor McCraw, please.
Sorry about that, Chair. A certain amount of inevitability in this, wasn't there? Actually, I just wanted to address something in the report that particularly caught my attention when I was going through it. A large portion of the report refers to materiality. Materiality, I'll be honest, I had to look it up. And according to the dictionary definition, it relates to what is relevant and important. So one suggestion, I don't think materiality is exactly a user-friendly word, although I understand we are all prone to a little bit of jargon. But I was just going to suggest that once the word materiality is introduced into a report, perhaps in brackets, it could say relevant and important, or whatever definition would be most helpful to anybody in the public looking at it, for example, or in fact, any ordinary councillor. But I would like to ask of anybody, how is that materiality, the relevance and importance, assessed? When we assign numbers to it, what is the basis on which we are saying, right, that is material and that is not? Just some indication. I understand you can't be too specific.
Yeah, that's a fair question, and I think that's also a fair comment about how understandable the term materiality is, and we do have a regular challenge on trying to make sure that technical audit speak is understandable. So I think your reference to relevant important is actually very useful, so thank you for that. So in terms of how we calculate it, so on page 135 we kind of give you a bit more detail on materiality. So I mean, ultimately, as you rightly say, materiality is a professional view that auditors express in terms of what they deem to be material. You might have your own view, and actually officers are encouraged to take a different view to the auditor on what they deem to be material. But essentially, we have an option of choosing what we think is an appropriate benchmark in terms of what is actually more relevant to the entity that we're auditing in terms of what we would then use to work out materiality. So for the purposes of a local authority, we choose gross expenditure as being the most meaningful kind of benchmark in terms of we would then calculate a percentage of that gross expenditure to work out what's material. Within EY, we have a sliding scale between 2 and 1% of gross expenditure to determine the materiality for a local authority. 2% reflecting our view that actually there's a lower profile in terms of your accounts than if you were, say, if you were subject to kind of various regulations reviews by I don't know, Ofsted, CQC, whoever it might be, then we might drop down that to 1%. But 2% represents a kind of higher level, which is a positive thing for the council. We then have to determine what's called performance materiality, which is in essence driven by the auditing standards that say, whilst you might set your planning materiality at a certain level, you then need to consider a lower level for your testing. So in effect, the performance materiality is the level we start thinking about what will we test on your balance sheet or within your income and expenditure statements. And again, within EY, our approach is to either use 75% of that planning materiality or 50%. 75% reflecting our view that actually your accounts preparation processes are pretty good, and we wouldn't expect to find many material misstatements in your accounts. If we did think the adverse to that we thought that your accounts preparation process wasn't appropriate and there's a high risk that we'd find material misstatements, then we would drop that testing level performance materiality to 50%. So ultimately, we have to have some way of having a consistent approach to calculate materiality, and that's the way we do it at EY. Other firms I've worked to have a slightly different approach, but ultimately it's based on a percentage of an appropriate benchmark, which for local authorities we deem as being gross expenditure.
Thanks. Can I just follow up on that, Councillor?
Yes, certainly. Certainly.
It's really just to say I think a lot of people will be very relieved fact that the benchmark based on turnover is as low as 2% or even 1%, because I mean that's a relatively small amount of money, and yet that is being regarded as relevant and important. It's quite important for that confidence to be established in the accounts and in the audit trail itself. So thank you very much for that. Can I just ask one more question and then I will shut up for a while? This is for our Section 151 officer. I know it's hard to believe, but it can happen. And that's just to ask on the question of fees, because obviously fees for audit, internal, external, whatever, well, external certainly, must be part of the cost of doing business. After all, this is a legal requirement. We must do this. I'd just like to ask Catherine if the scale of fees would be something that she would regard, in her professional opinion, as reasonable for councils of our size. It's a simple yes or no, I'm afraid, Catherine. It's not a complicated one.
I don't know if I can just say yes or no to it actually, without giving just a little bit of context to it.
Do the complicated version as though I'd asked a proper question that wasn't a simple closed question. We'll go from there.
I'd certainly acknowledge that the audit fees have come down too low. I think the scale fee planned for both Babergh and Mid Suffolk is down in the 30,000s for 2019-20 accounts, and it wasn't that many years ago both councils were paying close to 100,000. So whilst the contract with PSAA has obviously brought savings to the councils, my professional view is it has come down too low now. So I think we do need to increase the fees. The conversation is, I think, with PSAA and obviously with EY is how quickly we put it up and to what level. But yes, I believe it has come down too low to give us the quality audit that we need of our accounts.
Those costs would not actually measure up on the materiality scale then, would they?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Matheson, please.
Thank you. If I could ask Vicky Chong to just run over one part again. There was a lot of detail there, and my brain doesn't work as fast as probably hers, certainly. You spoke about the scope of the audit in relation to SIFCO and Gateway 14. Could you kind of elaborate or go around that again, please?
Yeah, sure. So how we determine the scoping is based on the sizes of the entity or the risk of these entities. So SIFCO and Gateway has been assessed that their blue scope is because of mainly because of the size, because SIFCO has around like 50 million in invested in investment properties, and the nature of the business they run, which is based on the rental income, and therefore the COVID-19 in some way will have some impact on just in terms of valuation of this property. Gateway 14 is another one because of the land that purchased in closer in 1718 or 1819, that which is around 60 million. That is under development purpose, and again, it's the size of that accounts. So therefore, on that basis, we have assigned a full scope, so that we will rely on a full audit that performed by Ernst, and at the maturity level that we set for them, and also on the additional procedures that we require them to perform. For example, on their PP evaluations and going concern as well, in light of the COVID-19. For Miss Suffolk, MSDC Suffolk Holding and BDC Suffolk Holding, we assign them as a specific scope because in comparison, they are smaller entities compared to Suffolk and Gateway 14, and therefore the risk is also is reduced in terms that it's not as high as compared to the other two entities, and that's the reason how we have scoped them.
Thank you, Vicky. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Matheson?
My brain isn't quite so fast. I think I understand that quite a lot better now. Thank you. So we're saying that you're particularly concerned about the COVID impact on SIFCO, but the size impact of Gateway 14. I think my supplementary really is that do you look at the various risk registers of the council, but also of the companies?
We as part of our planning and our audit, we do look at the corporate register of the council, and we will consider, how if there's any risk being flagged up on the risk register that we need to take into considerations in our audit work. Yes.
Of the company, the individual companies have risk registers, but they're not being audited by yourselves.
No.
But then ultimately you'll need to consolidate them.
My understanding is that your risk register will include, if there's any things flag up on Suffolk and Gateway 14 that are significant, there will also be included in your risk register as well.
But just to be clear, Councillor, we wouldn't necessarily look at the risk registers held by those individual companies.
But ultimately you would look at the asset valuation, the work that the relevant other auditor has performed.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Councillor McLaren, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure who will answer this question, and I think I remember asking this question last year. I want to refer to the pension liability valuation, which shows that at 2019 for Babergh it was 22.9 million, and I think I've seen some figures somewhere for the March 2020. As pension funds are very much in the news with COVID-19, and thinking about the future, where do we sit? So that's Babergh, in a national list of do we compare favourably to other councils within the country with a deficit like these?
Chair, would you like me to
Catherine,
start
can
on
you
that
take
one?
that, please? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I start on that one. There isn't a national chart, if you like, in terms of how all the different pension funds are performing, but we had a revaluation as at it was March 2019, I think was the last triennial valuation of the Suffolk Pension Fund, and Suffolk came out very well overall nationally. I think Babergh was around about 94-95% funded at that point in time. So whilst the figure that you see in the accounts is a large number, We are relatively well funded at the moment. I know Mid Suffolk was slightly behind Babergh, but I think Suffolk as a whole, the pension fund is better funded than others around the country.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lindsay, please.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to add to that answer, because I'm on the. So I'll switch my camera on. I'm on the pension fund committee at Suffolk, and if Councillor McLaren would like sort of some more detail, they actually the last is publicly available in the papers to the committee. They did a little run through of all the local authority pension funds in the country and where we sat for different measures. And things have changed since the end of the year because of the financial crash, but we're still holding up, you know. But that's as Catherine said, that's for Suffolk as a whole, for all the pension within that, where there isn't a breakdown of Babergh or Mid Suffolk. But that's if you look on the County Council website for papers to the pension committee, that should be on there. I don't think that was in the confidential section.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lindsay. That's very helpful.
Yeah, Councillor Matheson, then Councillor McCraw, please.
Yeah, thank you. It seems to come back to me that on the pension deficit, that in the minutes, we were told that we would eliminate the deficit in 3 years, but I guess that Catherine Steele might want to re-advise on that in the light of subsequent events, let's say.
Catherine, did you want to take that point up, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Obviously, that was the view of the actuaries based on March 19 valuation that they did. The next one will be as at March 22, because it's a 3-yearly valuation. So we will have to wait and see what the fund position looks like and what world events and world economy looks like at that point in time. So I'm sure there will be some impact, and be surprised if the economy is back to where it was by March 22. But we have to wait until we actually get to that point and then see what the position looks like.
Thanks.
Thank you, Catherine. Councillor Matheson, did you wish to ask a supplementary?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Councillor Lindsay, you've got your hand raised again.
Sorry, Chair, just forgot to lower it.
Okay, Councillor Matheson, you've raised your hand again.
Have I?
Yes.
I don't think so. Well,
you got no other questions?
It hadn't gone down yet.
Thank you, Councillor Matheson. Do any other members have any other questions on this paper? No. Do any members wish to debate this item further before we look at the recommendation? Thank you very much. Well, the recommendation on page 115 is that the report is noted and any comments on the report are fed back to Ernst Young. I'm happy to propose that recommendation. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor McLaren?
Yes, I wish to support the proposal and the recommendation, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Can I ask the Governance Officer, please, to do the roll call for the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, please reply for, against or abstain. Councillor Amarosin?
For.
Councillor Lindsay?
For.
Councillor McCraw?
For.
Councillor McLaren?
For.
Councillor Matheson?
For.
Councillor Muller?
For.
Councillor Norris?
For.
Thank you, Chair. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to move on to the final item of the agenda, which is agenda item number 12, JAC/1921, the forward plan. And I would now like to invite Jan Robinson, the Corporate Manager for Democratic Services, to present the plan, please. Jan, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This report is just a standard forward plan, and what we've done is we've gathered up the information of all the plans and reports that come forward in a year and put them in a plan so that councillors are aware of what is coming up. Just to point out that we do have an additional committee on the 11th of August, and that will cover the end of year risk position, treasury management outturn, and consultation on the new model code of conduct. And that's all I have to add. It is just for noting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any suggestions, comments or amendments from members, please? I've got Mary, you've got your hand up.
Sorry, Chair, that was my mistake.
Okay, Suresh, please.
Yeah, Chair, it was just to flag that I think in the, I'm just getting into it. Where is it gone? You got it in September, the Statement of Accounts and Audit Report 2019-20, that needs to move to January, Chair, in light of the timetable that we discussed in the plan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are all members happy with that, moving that item from September to January? Suresh, did you wish to come back at all?
Sorry, no.
No, that's fine. Okay. Therefore, do any other members have any questions or anything on the particular plan? No, thank you very much. Oh,
sorry, Chair. Sorry, this is I'm getting confused with dates. But I had in my diary another date for our committee to meet next week in the afternoon. Was that just a reserved date when we were? Have I got that completely wrong?
No, it's the 11th of August. Tuesday, the 11th of August is our next meeting, Councillor Lindsay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, I was just looking to reassure myself that some of the outstanding issues that have been highlighted early in the meeting, really stemming from the minutes, that we'll get those, that they'll find their way into an agenda item in August or September. Don't necessarily need to see them here now, but that they will appear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Matheson. Okay, therefore that the audit and standards plans for Babergh and Mid Suffolk are noted, and therefore this concludes today's meeting. So I'd like to thank everyone that's taken part in today's meeting for their contributions, and I wish you all a good afternoon. I'll see you all on the 11th of August. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Chair.